Marriage. It's one of the oldest, most fundamental human institutions we have. But after literally thousands of years, why does it feel like it's in a bit of a crisis? In this explainer, we're going to break down the whole idea of marriage, from our deep evolutionary roots all the way to its complicated place in our modern world. And this is really the big question at the heart of it all, isn't it? Are we biologically hardwired for a lifelong partner? Or is marriage just a social idea, a tradition that's maybe run its course? Let's dive right into that tension.
All right, here's how we're going to tackle this. First, we'll look at the ancient science of human bonding. Then, we'll get into the data behind the modern marriage crisis. After that, we'll explore how we're all rethinking connection today. And finally, dig into the spiritual side of things, including a really powerful idea of marriage as a fortress for our well-being.
Okay, so let's start at the very beginning, way back in our deep past. Why do we humans even pair up in the first place? Well, it turns out the answer is literally written into our biology and our psychology. Now, it's really important to get this distinction right away. On one hand, you've got biological pair bonding. That's the deep evolutionary impulse that helped our ancestors make sure their kids survived. And on the other hand, you've got the social institution of marriage, all the legal, economic, and religious rules that society built on top of that impulse. They're not the same thing, but man, are they connected. And get this, our own bodies are in on the act. Our brains release this powerful chemical cocktail, things like oxytocin, vasopressin, and dopamine, that actually rewards us for being close to someone, for building trust and attachment. Some scientists even think romantic love itself evolved to be a kind of commitment device, a biological trick to keep parents together for the kids. So it's not just a feeling. It's a mechanism.
And the payoff for this kind of bond? It's huge. Fulfilling that deep human need to belong through a healthy partnership isn't just some nice little bonus. The data is incredibly clear. It's tied to living longer, having lower rates of depression, and just feeling more satisfied with life. It's like a shield against all the stress the world throws at you.
Okay, but here's the twist. Here's the paradox. If this bond is so natural and so good for us, why is the institution of marriage facing what so many people are calling a crisis? I mean, when you look at the actual numbers, they're pretty startling. Just look at this. Back in 1960, almost 3/4 of adults in the U.S. were married. Fast forward just 50 years to 2010, and that number has dropped to only about half. That is a massive, massive societal shift in just a couple of generations. And it's not just that fewer people are getting married in the first place. For those who do tie the knot, the odds have been tough. With divorce rates hanging around 46%, it really does seem like modern marriage is under some kind of serious pressure.
So what happened? What gives? If this pair bonding thing is so natural and so beneficial for us, why is the formal institution of marriage having such a hard time right now?
Well, it's not just one thing. It's more like a perfect storm of huge cultural changes. Our whole mindset has shifted more toward personal fulfillment. We've seen incredible positive changes like greater gender equality, which means women are no longer as financially dependent on marriage. And at the same time, living together has become a totally normal alternative, while the religious and legal pressures to get married and stay married have gotten a lot weaker.
Now, all this crisis talk hasn't just erased our deep need for connection. Of course not. What it has done is force us to get creative and rethink how we find it, moving way beyond the old traditional models. In the past, the path was pretty straightforward. It was like a single road everyone was expected to travel. Marriage was the destination for family and stability. But today, that single road has exploded into a whole complex map of different routes. People live together, they have living apart together relationships, or they might consciously choose to be single. The one-size-fits-all approach is pretty much gone.
And then, of course, technology threw a whole new wrench in the works. This idea of the paradox of choice is so real. I mean, when you have what feels like an endless stream of potential partners right there on a dating app, how do you ever actually decide? That fear that a slightly better match might just be one more swipe away can make it feel almost impossible to truly commit.
So, with all this change and all this uncertainty, something really fascinating is starting to happen. It seems like people are beginning to look for something deeper, a more profound purpose in their relationships. And that search is often leading them to explore the spiritual side of marriage. This is where you start hearing this term, a sacred covenant. And this isn't just about a legal contract between two people. This is the idea of a bond that's seen as being blessed by something bigger, by a divine or transcendent power. It's a commitment that's supposed to be strengthened by spiritual principles that go beyond just the day-to-day material world. And when you start looking at it that way, your whole perspective on the hard times can change. Suddenly, challenges aren't just reasons to think about quitting. They become opportunities for growth, for spiritual growth. That old phrase, for better or for worse, becomes less of a trap and more of a shared spiritual practice, a commitment to developing things like patience, forgiveness, and real, lasting love.
All right, to make this less abstract, let's look at a really specific spiritual framework. The Baha'i faith has a unique and, I think, really powerful take on marriage that seems to speak directly to the challenges we're facing today.
This right here is this central metaphor, and it's a potent one. Marriage as a fortress for well-being. Just think about what a fortress is for. It provides safety, security, peace, and mutual protection from the outside world. The idea here is that a strong marriage can be that kind of a stronghold, a place where two people support, defend, and help each other grow in every single part of their lives. So how do you actually build this fortress? Well, the Baha'i teachings lay out a pretty clear blueprint. First, the goal isn't just for this life. It's to create an eternal bond, a real union of two souls. Second, it has to be built on a foundation of absolute equality between the partners, who are seen as two helpmates. And third, and this is interesting, it involves getting parental consent, which is meant to unite the two families and create this broader foundation of support and harmony right from the start. The wedding ceremony itself is incredibly simple. The only thing that's required is for both people to say this one verse in front of some witnesses. It's a collective promise, we will all, that frames the marriage not just as a promise to each other, but as a shared commitment to a higher purpose. It sets a tone of humility and teamwork from day one. So ultimately, what this perspective does is it completely reframes the purpose of marriage. It stops being just a social contract for life on Earth and becomes an eternal spiritual journey. The whole point is for the partners to actively help each other become better people, to help each other grow morally and spiritually, creating a kind of union that lifts them both up. And all of this leaves us with a pretty provocative final thought. You know, we live in a world that's all about endless choice and temporary connections. In that world, maybe choosing to build a fortress, choosing deep, unconditional, and even eternal commitment, maybe that isn't old-fashioned at all. Maybe, just maybe, it's the most radical and meaningful choice any of us can make.